Hello, everyone, and welcome to Finding Statistics on the Statistics Canada website. This is for you as you enter the room. This is for you if you're building out your business plans, wanting to pivot your business, understand how to find details about your industry, your competition, maybe your ideal clients, or what things look like in the landscape around you for business. Statistics Canada is the wheelhouse for everything. So we have Darren here today and Laszlo who are going to walk you through how to find all of this stuff on the StatsCan website. It can be a little tricky to do. So I'm hoping a lot of you are here to learn how to do that. And we're going to do more of a show and tell than a presentation. So I'm really happy they're going to show you some sections of the website. So if you have some burning market research questions, or you just want to know, hey, how do I find something, or how do I understand, what I want to know in my industry? We've got the Q&A box. So I'm going to do a little housekeeping in a minute with you so you know how to ask questions during this presentation as well. So my name is Linda Griffian. I'm the Education Programs Coordinator with BusinessLink. We always start all of our meetings with a land acknowledgement. So BusinessLink acknowledges and respects that we are on traditional land, meeting grounds, territories, gathering places, and traveling routes of treaties 4, 6, 7, 8, and 10, and the home to many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people. In the spirit of reconciliation, we acknowledge the lands of those who've come before us, reside here now and in the future. So what I want everyone to do is make sure that you've got chat open, because Laszlo's going to be putting some links into chat that are going to be relevant today. The first one is going to be the StatsCan website link. And if you have questions, you can look at the bottom of your screen and you'll see a little box called Q&A. That's where you can type in your questions throughout, and I'll be shouting them out to Darren as he presents. So you need to get out of this what you need to get out of this. Don't hesitate to put questions in the Q&A. No question is wrong. So whatever you need to ask today is fabulous. And on that note, Darren, I'm going to let you start to take it away if you're ready to go.
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Bonjour tout le monde. Bienvenue, everyone. My name is Darren Laszewski. I'm here with my colleague, Laszlo. And just in the spirit of reconciliation with my First Nations and Métis and Inuit brothers and sisters, Laszlo and I are both joining you from Territory 1, Treaty 1, and home of the Métis. So Laszlo, would you like to say hello? Oh, you're muted. Oh, I think you're still muted, Laszlo. Oh, I don't think we can hear Laszlo, unfortunately. Not sure what's happening there.
Okay, I'm not sure what was going on there. I'm not sure what's going on there either. Just so you know, I'll just be helping Darren out with the slideshow, and if you have any questions, we'll be directing them to him, and I'll just be putting in the hyperlinks for you guys to take a look at later on.
Thank you, Laszlo. So, as Linda's already indicated, I like to teach these with the philosophy that I want you to get as much as you can from this session. So please feel free to post questions in the Q&A. I'll try and make this as practical and as relevant to what you're hoping to do. I'm also going to spend, or at least try to, sort of demystify some of the intimidation that people might have when they're looking for information, particularly if you're trying to develop a business plan, or if you're trying to think about what might be some of the options and some of the potential, some of the statistics, using information like statistical information that helps you set the context, identify potential markets, identify potential target audiences, can be really helpful, in addition to that great idea or that drive and desire that you might have for establishing a business. So that's going to be the focus for today. We've got a lot we want to show you. So I'm going to start by just quickly providing an introduction to show some slides. And then, as Linda has suggested, what I'm going to try and do is go to the Statistics Canada website and actually show you some of the data. So it's a little bit easier for you to appreciate sort of what you can do with the information as opposed to me just lecturing. So that's the premise for today. So if everyone is ready to start, I'm going to share my screen, and we'll start by just providing a quick introduction. So if everyone is able to see the first slide, we're going to talk today about finding business information. One of the first aspects I always like to remind people is that there's not one data source or one particular survey that's going to be able to answer all of your questions. So part of the learning process is just becoming familiar with all the different data sources that you can tap into to try and help answer some of your questions. So that's going to be sort of the philosophy that we have for this presentation. We'll talk about just how important it is to be able to use good, reliable statistical information to sort of help in decision making. And then, as I said, I'll walk you through the website. Before we get started, we always like to sort of take the opportunity to let people know about Statistics Canada as the national statistical agency. Laszlo and I are both here to sort of try and reach out to data users to try and increase the people's confidence and ability to use the information that we as the National Statistical Agency produce. Our mission is to provide good, reliable, high quality data to Canadians on a whole host of topics: population, resources, the economy, the environment, social and cultural aspects. But we also have a second aspect in terms of what we're asked to do, and that is to build data literacy and statistical capacity. And that's why we're so happy to always take the opportunity to come and speak to you today and to others around the country in terms of letting you know that, this is your data. We want you to use it. We want you to feel comfortable making use of it. And we want to try and demystify some of that intimidation that might be involved with finding and using Statistics Canada data. I'm going to show you about a dozen different data sources today, roughly, but that's just a small sliver of all the different data that's available. So, there are hundreds of active surveys that Statistics Canada is always doing. And so if you're new to Statistics Canada, this is the beginning of your learning process, the beginning of your journey. I want to encourage you to sort of take the opportunity to use this as a springboard to start with business data, but also explore some of the other data that might be available to you that I won't necessarily touch on today. So that's the sort of the basic premise of why we are here today, and just to remind people that a lot of the information is available for free on the website, Statistics Canada's website. So we want people to use it because, as I said, it's your data. So that's sort of the premise of why we're here today in terms of our perspective, our objective. From a business data perspective, we want to sort of highlight what exactly some of the things you can do with the information. So, we talk about using statistics and statistical information to help you make decisions. What kind of decisions are we talking about? What are some of the characteristics that we can help you with? And some of the data we have, as I've said, will help you sort of identify or perhaps think about who your market might be. So the composition of your market, who might be, what's the age structure or the specific segment of the population you might be looking at. It might be females, it might be males, it might be seniors, it might be youth, it might be a particular segment of the population. From an ethnocultural perspective, you might want to focus on the Indigenous population or things of that nature. So some of the data that we have will allow you to do that. I'll introduce you to the census. We have data that is very specific to industries, and we classify information by what's called an industry code. So I'm going to introduce you to the way that information is classified. It's called the NAICS, or the North American Industrial Classification System. I'll spend some time talking about that, primarily because a lot of the data that's released or published or available is going to be based on, not all of it, but a lot of it is going to be based on what we call NAICS codes, or North American Industrial Classification codes. So while it may look intimidating at the start and you think, wow, I want to start a hair salon, it's helpful to know where that industrial activity fits within the broader classification of different activities that take place. And so you'll realize that that type of activity has a particular code associated with it. And so as we go through the examples of the data that's available, you'll start to see and appreciate how, if I know what NAICS code I'm looking for, I can better understand and make sense of the information that I'm getting and put it into use, put it into perspective. Then we're going to talk a little bit about some of the data sources that allow us to look at, oftentimes people are looking at trade or export. How many businesses are involved in a particular trade or export activity? We have data that allows you to sort of identify some of that by different levels of geography across the country and across the provinces and things of that nature. And then we'll talk a bit about some information that's not necessarily on Statistics Canada's website, but it's primarily derived from Statistics Canada information. And that is information that's quite useful, particularly from a business planning perspective. If you're thinking about developing a business plan, there is information from Innovation Science and Economic Development Canada that sort of gives you an indication of what are the type of expenses different industries or different businesses encounter by different size of that industry. What are some of the operating expenses? What are some of the revenues? What are some of the margins? And so that can be really useful to help you sort of anticipate how your business might fare in the first year, first 5 years, things of that nature. So that's the scope of what we're going to try and cover today. As I said, I'm going to take you to Statistics Canada's website. I'm not going to, you will get a copy of the slides. I'll send you a copy of the slides that we've used, and that will sort of provide you an introduction to the different topics that I'm covering. But for now, I'm going to close the presentation here, and I'm going to go to the Statistics Canada website, and we're going to walk you through the different data sources. So again, if there's any questions, please feel free to post in the chat. And if there's anything sort of really burning, Laszlo or Linda are welcome to interject.
So I'm going to jump in there.
Sure, please.
I'm going to jump in, Darren, and ask, Are you going to cover what a NAICS code is and how to locate it on StatCan? Yes. Perfect. So one of the things then maybe I'll ask a few people to do is if they have an idea about what type of business they're in or what industry they might be in. So, I'm a personal trainer, or I'm in the restaurant business or something like that. Can you folks put some of that into chat? So if you want to know how to find your NAICS code and what industry you're in, if you want to just type what you think your industry is in the chat box right now while we start the next stage. So we already have someone who says children's book publisher. So we've got a few of those. So watch for that to come in. Counseling and therapy, children's book publisher, mental health, cybersecurity consulting, lots and lots. So go ahead, Darren. I'll stop bombing you with everything, but perfect.
I will specifically and purposely, when I show you the example of the NAICS, I will walk you through sort of the logic of how it's organized and how you can drill down. And well, I'll show you, but you'll be able to see a description and some examples of which characteristics fit into those different NAICS codes or North American Industrial Classification codes. And as I said, it's a good foundation. It's not the most exciting thing in the world, but it's a good foundation to know. So I'll definitely spend some time going through that. So wonderful. Any other questions before I go to the website? If not, let's see if I can remember how to go to Statistics Canada's website here. People are able to see the StatsCan website? Yes? No? Perfect. Yes. Okay. So as I said, we'll start at the basics. So I like the principle of before we run, we're going to walk. So we're going to walk you through the Statistics Canada website, sort of help you find some basic information. The first thing that is really useful is it's not specific to business data per se, but it is one of the most important data sets Statistics Canada produces, and that is the census. The census of population. The census of population is conducted every 5 years, and it is a complete enumeration of the entire population. And so the great thing about the census is it has a great amount of detail about particular segments of the population, like age structure and ethnic composition and educational attainment levels. But it also has data on labor force characteristics and income. So, what is the average and the median household income in a particular community? And so average is the average point, median is the midpoint. So you can use that as a sort of a foundation or a building block. We often like to refer to it as sort of establishing a benchmark where you can compare your communities. And the other great thing about the census is that the census allows you to look at much smaller areas, particular communities, for example. You could look at specific First Nations. You could look at, smaller cities and communities, villages, things of that nature, and get good, reliable data that isn't often available from other data sources. So on the Statistics Canada's website, if you're able to see my cursor, you'll see that there's, I call them tabs. I don't know if that's the correct term or not. You'll see there's 8 sort of tabs along the top of the StatsCan webpage. If you're not familiar with the webpage, I'd encourage you to sort of, come on here and spend some time to explore. We have subjects, so if you're looking for a particular subject, or if you have a rough idea of what you can look by the sort of the broad 31 sort of subjects for which we have data for, as well as some what we call hubs. So we have data that kind of tries to coalesce all the different information into sort of broad classifications. So if you're interested in things like poverty or transportation statistics, we have those. But you can look at sort of the different aspects or topics that we might have data for. We have the actual data tables. We have analysis, our daily newsletter, which is called the Daily. And then we have reference material. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time because while I encourage people to be familiar with the reference material, it's something that you'll become more familiar with as you start to delve into the data, because being familiar with the reference is going to help you understand how things are classified, how concepts are defined, and things of that nature. I want to spend some time specifically talking about the census. And just very briefly, so there's a specific tab on the homepage that takes you right to the census, and it'll take you to the census homepage or the landing page. And if you click on the census, this is the landing page for the census home page, and it will have, again, some different tabs that are available. I'm going to sort of highlight the data tab and just sort of draw your attention to 2 key aspects. One of them is that there's what's called a census profile. So if you're looking for information for your community, it might be a particular community in Alberta. You can look to see if it's there in the profile, and you can get some basic information about it. But there's also data tables where you can look at specific variables. And I'm going to look at the data tables and just draw your attention to the data tables and sort of highlight the themes, the topics that's available. So as I've said, you can get data by age and age structure. Age is a good indicator of behavior. And you might have a market or a business idea that's focusing on a specific segment of the population, under 15, 65 plus. This will allow you to get a sense of how big that market is and how it's changed over time. You might be looking at information for people who own homes as opposed to rent. The census allows us to understand that. You could be looking for people who have particular incomes, high or low. The census allows us to understand that. Indigenous population, educational attainment level. So if you want to understand what the education level is in your community, you can use the census to help that, as well as just, the ethnic composition of your community. The census is one of the few data sources that allows us to look at the ethnic composition of different communities, immigrant population, visible minority status, or persons, racialized population. So again, if you have a particular niche you're looking at, the census can be a good starting point, a benchmark or a foundation that can help you answer some basic questions. It's not business specific, but it's allowing you to sort of set the parameters of the characteristics of the community you might be interested in. So that's the census. And we do have, I'm just going to go back to the census profile. You can look and see sort of the profiles that are available for different communities. You can look at provinces. And we also have a profile that's specific to the Indigenous population. So if you have a specific focus on the Indigenous population, you can use the Indigenous profile to get a sense of, how big the Indigenous population is in your community, the age structure, educational attainment level, things of that nature. So those are some really good starting points from our perspective in terms of being familiar with data that will help you understand your market, okay? And so I'm just going to go back to the home page, and I'm going to take you right now to the description of the North American Industrial Classification System. I'm going to do it as if I were new to the StatsCan website. I'm going to use the search function, and I'm just going to type in NAICS, which is the abbreviation for North American Industrial Classification System. I'm going to click search. And again, our website will take you to sort of a description of the classification. I'm just going to click on here. And that it will take us to sort of the home page for the classification system. And here, the key I wanted to show you is how the information is organized. And the idea from the NAICS is that it starts from a very broad perspective, the 2-digit, very broad characterization of different industrial activities. And then you can drill down. So as one of my colleagues, Desiree, likes to say, the more detailed the NAICS code, the more detailed the information about the actual industrial activity or business activity. So if you have a particular interest in mind, you can look at a particular one. I think somebody was mentioning, I just saw just as a chat something about publishing, if I remember correctly. So if I wanted to know more about information and cultural activities, for example, I can click on the link here, and it will take me to a description of what are the activities that comprise this sector, this industry. You can get some descriptions about, some examples, so you can get display the definitions of what exactly this industry comprises or how it's defined. And you can also get some examples, just sort of looking at how the information is structured. So you can start to see what I mean by, as you look at a more and more detailed NAICS code, the more and more specific the activity becomes. So if I was interested, somebody, I just as a chance, I noticed somebody was talking about children's books, or I think it was in the chat. I may have, or software publishing. You can start to see how we have broad classifications for publishing and book publishers, software publishers, and then we can click further down and get even further detail. And you can start to see sort of software publishers, traditional or video publishers. And you, again, just click on that and it'll provide you with even more detail. So that's sort of the way the classification system works. And so I really want you to be familiar with this. And, don't feel too intimidated. Start to recognize the broad structure. The broad structure is the easiest way to begin, and then start to delve into the detail. And the reason this is important is because I'm going to show you some data sources later that use the NAICS codes. So the data is reported in NAICS codes. So just spending some time learning this is going to help you be able to interpret and use that information more effectively. So that's why we spent some time talking about NAICS. So if there's any questions about that, again, I would encourage you to sort of explore this and sort of start to see how the information is organized. So that in itself isn't necessarily business statistics either. So we've started the presentation on business statistics with 2 data sources that aren't actually business related. But as I said, we're building the foundation to start from. So that's the sort of beginning point. Now I want to try and get into some actual specific data sources or surveys that I want you to be familiar with. And again, this is a quick introduction where we want you to be familiar with the type of information that's available. And so the next data source I want you to be familiar with, and again, I'm just going to go back to the home page, is a data source which is called the Survey of Household Spending. SHS is what we call it. So the Survey of Household Spending. And the Survey of Household Spending is a really useful. I'm just going to show you how you would search for it on our website.
Darren, are you
go ahead.
Are you going to be sending out the PDF or the
I will.
PowerPoint presentation? Okay.
After the session, I'll send the.
What we're doing, everyone, just for simplicity, is we post this recording to the Business Link YouTube channel, just because a lot of what we're doing is interactive here as opposed to just the slideshow. So like all of our webinars, we post this to the YouTube channel for Business Link, and it'll be on in the next two business days or so. You'll see it pop into our YouTube channel, so you can just watch this over and over again.
There you go. So yeah, I couldn't remember if we normally send a PDF, but since I'm not actually doing slides, well, we have a couple of slides, but we don't technically have slides. This is more interactive. So yeah, you can ideally refer back to that. And if I'm going too quickly, just let me know. I can certainly slow down. But I do want to make sure that we sort of try and cover as much as we can today. So hope that's helpful. Any other questions, comments at this point? If not, I'll use this as the springboard to talk about the Survey of Household Spending. This is a survey that's done, Laszlo, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's done every 2 years. And it's a really important data set because it allows us to look at what are Canadian households spending their money on? And we can look at by income quintile. So the data allows us to look at high income households, low income households. How much do they spend on cell phones? How much do they spend on food at restaurants? How much do they spend on car repair? Those are the type of information. And if you're trying to build a business plan, you're trying to anticipate what your potential revenue or income might be, getting a sense of what the typical Canadian household spends on different items can be a really good starting point. And so I'm just going to sort of point you to the most recent release from the Survey of Household Spending was last month, if I remember correctly. October 18th. And so it allows us to look at what households are spending on transportation, what households are spending on electronics and things of that nature. So it can be an extremely useful tool to, again, set the foundation for what type of revenues a business plan can anticipate. And it's good, reliable information that can help sort of understand different spending patterns across the country and different spending patterns by different family types. The different spending patterns from people who own their dwelling as opposed to people who rent. And by household size. So you might be thinking of focusing on a particular household, people who live alone, for example. What are they typically spending on food and cell phone plans and things of that nature? The Survey of Household Spending allows you to answer some of those questions. And again, we don't have time to delve into everything, but I'll just draw your attention to this is a daily release, or again, our daily newsletter, and it'll give you a description. It will also provide you a list of tables and data tables. And so this will just be an example of some of the data that you can look at. Household spending in the 3 territorial capitals, for example, or household spending by household tenure, as I said, by household type. Different family types have different housing, different spending characteristics and patterns. by income quintiles. So again, by what is the different sort of spending pattern based on high or low income households. This data will allow you to understand and look at that. So in my opinion, a really useful data source that we want you to be familiar with. We want you to make use of. The second, or sort of other data source, well, there's several data sources we're going to cover, but the first one that's really specific to business data is a data source called Canadian Business Counts. And Canadian Business Counts is a data source that's released twice a year. And again, this is all public information, so we want you to be familiar with. So again, I'm just going to keep it simple and use a simple search like anyone else would do. Canadian Business Counts. And I just want to show you the type of information that's available. And here you'll see, as I said, the data is released twice a year, in December and June. And so this is the most recent release. And here you'll see the data is being reported by NAICS code. And so it will describe the type of businesses by different industries. It'll give you an indication of how many businesses are in different industries in your community. So we have provincial data, we have census metropolitan area data, so big cities. But we also have cities for data for select Canadian cities. And you can say, I'm thinking of starting a mining operation. How many other mining operations are there in my province or my area? Or I might be looking at how many people are employed in different activities like real estate. And so the business counts will allow you to look at that. Will also allow you to look at things like range of employees by different industries. So 1 to 4 employees, 5 to 9 employees, 10 or more. And there's some additional data that's released, not necessarily every twice a year, but there's some additional data that's available sometimes upon request that identifies revenues and things of that nature. But I just wanted to draw your attention to the business counts and sort of show you the type of information that's available. So we have data for businesses with employees, businesses without employees, and businesses by cities. So just a very simple example in terms of if I were to look at the data. So this is for all the different communities across Canada. So if you're in St. John's, I don't know for sure. I think everyone here is in Alberta, but I'm not 100% certain. But we'd have data for Lethbridge and Calgary and Red Deer and Alberta and things of that nature. And you'll be able to see, how many industries there are. This is industries with employees. But for people who are new to Statistics Canada's website, and if you come to the website and look up a data table, I just want to give you a little sort of glimpse of how you can sort of pull more information from the data on our tables. And you can do that by using the pull down menus. Often the tables will have a different pull down menu. So if I'm looking for a specific industry like wholesale trade, I can select that. But you can also use, and if people see my cursor, you can also use what's called the add remove button. And add remove button allows you to, as the name says, add or remove different variables or characteristics to the table. And so, as I said, we can select the different geographies. We can deselect all of them if you wanted just 1 or 2. Like, let's say I don't want, I'm sure Halifax is a lovely city, but I don't care about how many industries there are in Halifax. But I would love to know how many there are in Calgary and Lethbridge. So I'm just going to click on Calgary and Lethbridge, and maybe I'd be interested in Red Deer and Edmonton as well. And I just want to draw your attention to, whenever you see a variable that has a plus sign in front of it, it means that if you click on it, you'll be able to select even more detail. So you notice here that the geography has gotten a little bit more specific. And here within Edmonton, this is the Edmonton Census Metropolitan Area, the big sort of geographical area. But you might be interested in communities that are within that census metropolitan. Like I might be interested in specifically in Leduc. So I can select Leduc, and that data will be reported as well. So total up to you in terms of how much, and then you can select how much detail you want with respect to, you know, all employees, employees 1 to 9, 5 to 9 employees. You can look to see different industries by the size of their employee base and how many employees they have. And then, of course, the key is you can select the different industries. And in this case, there's a plus sign in front of the subclassification. So you'll see all the different sort of industries. And I'm just going to come here and change this to 50, just so we can see the list of all the industries a little bit easier. And so you'll see, as I said, the data from broad classifications. In fact, I'm going to make this a little bit, I'm going to make this broader. I'm going to make this 100. Because there's 445 variables that you could select from. And so I just want to use this as a way to show you sort of how the detailed information, the information is detailed. So we start from a very broad classification. You might be interested in construction, but then you can delve into even more detailed construction and building. So now it's getting more specific. And you can look at even more detailed information. So the codes get more and more detailed as we go along. You start to see, and that comes back to what I was referring to earlier about understanding the NAICS classifications. And if I wanted to include all of these, I'd simply click on them and then click apply. And they will be added to the table. So for Calgary and Lethbridge, I can look at total publishing, how many there are, how many industries there are in Calgary, 153 as of June. Sorry, 143 as of June, things of that nature. And then finally, and I won't spend too much more time on this because we have a lot more to cover. You can download and save the data you've selected by clicking the download option, and you can save it as a CSV file with or without the accompanying notes and things of that nature. So if I wanted to save it, I could just save it and work on it later. So that's a quick introduction to two really key data sources: the survey household spending and the business counts. Any questions on that? I'm just going to hit home and go back to the home page because we have a lot more I'd want to sort of introduce you to. But we've talked about business counts, and they're by NAICS code. You might be interested in a particular business activity. So for example, you might be interested in retail or wholesale activity. So we have data on resale and wholesale trade. So if I, in fact, I'm going to use a little bit of a different approach. If I would go to subjects, I can click on subjects, and you'll notice that we have a specific topic on trade, international trade, and things of that nature. So if I was looking for trade data, I could use the search option I was using earlier. I could type in retail trade, I could type in wholesale trade, but I can also use the subject. And so I might be interested particularly in international trade. And so you can look at specific data for export businesses and import businesses. Before we get there, I just want to sort of remind people that, you know, there are different data sources for retail trade. We have a monthly survey of retailers. We have a survey of non-retail stores. We have a monthly wholesale survey, as well as a yearly wholesale survey. So you can look at sort of that type of information by simply searching, and you'll see the different data sources that are available. And then one of the key aspects we often get is, what are the trade characteristics of different industries and businesses? And so one of the tools we always want people to be familiar with is a tool we call the Canadian International Merchandise Trade Application, the CIMT. And it's a really valuable tool, but it's a tool that is actually reported not by NAICS, but by HS codes or harmonization codes. And so it reports different activities by different export or import activities. But for those who are interested in saying how many businesses in Canada, how many businesses in Alberta are engaged in different export activities, you can use this tool to access that type of information. And so on our website under the international trade is the access to the application, the CIMT application. And I just want data users to be familiar with. So again, you can look by exports. Who is Canada exporting to? Who are our customers in terms of our exports? So if I click on exports, we can look at who is our leading purchaser of our different commodities. So we can look at different commodities that we export, whether it be cattle or wheat, and we can look to see how much has been exported and to whom. We can look at our top export in terms of who are we exporting to, and within the United States, which areas within the United States. The United States tends to be our largest trade partner. Who tends to be our largest markets for the commodity or good that you might be interested in. That's exports. And then you can also look at specific to the United States in terms of which provinces or which states are the leading exporters and things of that nature, and how that's changed over time. Exports, and then we can also look at imports. What are we importing into Canada, and from whom? So who is our leading importers? Who, our top trading partners, and who and what are we importing from different countries? So United States, China, Mexico, Japan, Germany. What exactly are we importing from Germany in terms of how that's changed over time, and the top commodities that we import into Canada from Germany? So this is the type of data that's available to you, and you can sort of explore that. It allows you to look at trends. It allows you to look and see at the size and the magnitude of, gearboxes and motor vehicles by parts that we import from Germany. So that's a really important tool that we want people to be familiar with respect to import and export data. That's trade data. And then the only other aspect, well, not the only other aspect, but the one aspect that I want to sort of focus on from Statistics Canada perspective is a data survey called the Canadian Survey on Business Conditions. So if there are any questions on exports or imports, please feel free to post, and Laszlo or Linda, you're welcome to jump in. But because we
So
have,
there is.
oh yeah,
Sorry,
please, Laszlo, go ahead.
Yeah, there is one question. Sophie's asked: Is there people available to counsel that we can contact to help us navigate or find info on our specific industry?
Yes, I can answer that from a Business Link perspective.
Please.
So Business Link offers free market research support to all Alberta small businesses. We actually have a market research dedicated team who has access not only to StatsCan, but a variety of other industry databases that allow you to do some really deep diving into what we call secondary market research. That is a free service to you. Lots of large companies pay thousands of dollars for access to that kind of information and industry information, competition, things like that. So yes, that's a free service from Business Link. So you can go to the Business Link website and look for market research there. One of the key things though about market research, Barry's been fabulous. So Barry's really good. He's been around since we've been around, since 1996. One of the keys though to doing market research and doing that is to understand exactly what it is and how it works. What's primary, what's secondary, how does that all work? What is it you want to find out, and to set some goals for it. So for everyone who wants to dive a little deeper into how to do that so that you're not wasting your time trying to look for stuff you don't need, or you're not wasting your time looking for things that don't matter, all of that kind of thing, or just getting to the nuts and bolts of what you need to get to. We actually offer a market research workshop. We offer it at least once every 6 weeks. So I'm just going to let everyone know when the next one is coming up for you. So it's in our events and webinars, and I believe we have one coming up. It may not be posted yet. Oh, it is. It's December 5th, 10:30 to noon. It is a 90-minute workshop. I'll be giving it, and it talks all about how to do some basic market research, how to set goals for it so you know what you're looking for. You don't want to just put spaghetti on the wall. And also you can use some of the materials that we're working on there so that you can better access our market research department and get your questions down the way you need to get them down to work on your business plan. Did that take up enough time?
No, that's okay, Linda. That's fine. And so there you go. I encourage you to sort of explore the opportunities that are available to you. They'll walk you through. I suspect they go beyond just Statistics Canada. I haven't taken the session, but I suspect they go beyond just Statistics Canada data sets. But for the Statistics Canada data sets, I was just going to add that if you do have questions that are specific to Statistics Canada data, we do have consulting analysts. For Laszlo and I are both consulting analysts, and there are consulting analysts well across the country. There'll be one for Alberta, and so we're available as well, primarily to help people understand Statistics Canada data sets. Although having said that, I'm going to show you some non-Statistics Canada data sets in a moment. But we're also available. We're not necessarily there to sort of do the work for you, but we can point you to the data set and make sure you're interpreting and understanding it correctly. That's the key, because and I suspect Linda will delve into this in the workshop, is you know, it's pretty easy to be overwhelmed by a lot of this information. So once you start to get a good understanding of what it is, what it can't tell you, even knowing what it can't tell you is going to be helpful, because it'll help you save you time from looking for something that's not available. So even just learning those sort of techniques and tips can be really useful. So no, it's a great question, and I would encourage you to sort of reach out to StatsCan. We do have an email, info at StatsCan. I don't know if Laszlo would be able to post it in the chat, but you're welcome to send StatsCan an email, and they will direct it to a consulting analyst who will try and help answer your questions. Again, specific to StatsCan data. So great questions. Excellent. Any other questions? I know I've gone over the import and export data pretty quickly. There's a lot there. So I hope I've sort of encouraged you to want to at least explore it. But I do want to make sure that we cover the Canadian Survey on Business Conditions. And then I want to spend a few moments talking about some data sets that's not on StatsCan's website, but that is primarily StatCan data, and that is financial performance data that's available. So I want to make sure we have time for that. But any other questions before I move on?
Yeah, did we cover NAICS code, how to find your NAICS code?
Yeah, I showed them the NAICS code, one of the first starting points.
Okay.
Right after the census, we covered the NAICS codes. If people want me to revisit that, I'd be happy to revisit that at the end, but we covered that.
I just wanted to check on that, because for financial performance data, that really applies to you and your NAICS code. There you go. I wanted to double check.
You're foreshadowing that the financial performance data is actually related to and released by NAICS codes. So again, sort of why we spend some time making sure that people might step back and say, well, geez, they spent a lot of time talking about that. Yeah, there's a reason for that, and because a lot of the information is reported in that way. So it is helpful to be familiar with them. So with that, with the time we have left, I want to make sure that I introduce you, or at least I cover one of the newer surveys or data sources that's available. So I'm just going to go back to the StatsCan homepage.
There are two questions. Emily,
go ahead, Laszlo.
Emily just wants a quick explanation on the Canadian Survey on Business Conditions, and then we've got one more in the open chat about education levels and labor market stats. So I'll just get you to address the first one. We can go to the second one.
I'm moving on right now to the Canadian Survey on Business Conditions, what it is, what it covers. And then if we have time, we'll come back to the census, but the census, I mean, there are other data sources, but the census is going to be one of the sources that will allow you to look at and even allow you to cross-tabulate education by labor force characteristics. That's one of the benefits of the census. It allows you to look at really detail. So you can look to see, you know, among people who have a university degree, what's their educational attainment level? Or what's their labor force characteristics? How many are as opposed to people who don't have a high school degree? What's their characteristics in terms of unemployment rate, labor force participation rate? So that's something you can do with census data. For the Canadian Survey of Business Conditions, I'm just going to use this as the springboard to make sure we at least introduce you to it. I'm just going to do the old simple search. And I've looked for it before, so I'm just going to introduce you to what this data set is and how it could be used. It's a really interesting data set because it provides a bit of qualitative considerations to the data that we have, which is primarily quantitative. And what I mean by that is quantitative is something that can be quantified, right? How many businesses are there? How many people work in those businesses? How many businesses are there in a particular industry? Whereas qualitative data, it touches more on sort of the qualities and the perspectives that people have. So the Canadian Survey of Business Condition provides data on businesses' expectations. You know, what are they expecting over the next 3 months or over the next year with respect to supply chain challenges? What are they expecting in terms of costs of business operating costs compared to revenue? You can look to see how businesses have a perspective, what their expectations are. We also ask businesses how optimistic they are. Do you anticipate, you know, closing down in the next year? Do you anticipate expanding in the next year? Can you take on more debt? If not, why not? So those are the type of the questions that are captured within the Canadian Business Survey. So it's a slightly different survey than the traditional approach where we're just trying to measure or count, you know, how many businesses there are. And so the Canadian Survey of Business Condition was started in 2020 in the midst of COVID because we recognized we needed to have a better understanding of how businesses are faring, but we also needed more detailed information. And so the Canadian Survey of Business Condition not just provides us information on businesses, but it provides information on businesses by ownership characteristics. How many businesses are owned by women? How many businesses are owned by immigrants? How many businesses are owned by First Nations, Métis or Inuit people? How many businesses are owned by persons with a disability? The Canadian Survey of Business Condition allows us to answer some of those questions. And so we can look to see, you know, what are the expectations in terms of profitability and how do they differ for businesses owned by women as opposed to businesses owned by a recent immigrant or First Nations person. We can also look at businesses by age of business. What I mean by that is businesses that are less than 2 years of age, you know, been around for 2 years or less, businesses that are 3 to 5 years, businesses that have been around for 20 years or more. And I was showing an example of this data set to another session. And one of the data questions allows us to ask businesses, what is your expectation in terms of increasing business costs? And what is your expectation in terms of increasing business revenue? And then I compared it by age of business. So businesses that were relatively new, less than 2 years of age, they had, you know, expectations of substantially higher business costs than what they thought their business revenues would be. Whereas when you compared it to the companies or businesses that have been around for 20 years or more, their expectations of business costs were, you know, not as high, but their expectation of business revenues were a lot more sort of in line. So it was one of those charts when you look at it and you think, okay, I can appreciate why and how stressful it can be for businesses that are new and fledgling in terms of making it those first few years. And so this data set allows you to sort of answer some of those questions, look at some of that data. And so it's data that's reported quarterly. And so, you know, it gives an indication of, you know, what's the impact of inflation? What's the impact of supply chain challenges? what are their expectations with respect to, do you anticipate your market shrinking? Do you anticipate your market growing? And then we can look to see, some of the different characteristics that might be driving that. And you'll see here, again, I sort of point you to the different data. There's over 30 data tables. And we can look to see in terms of, what are the most challenging obstacles that businesses are anticipating, expecting. But there's also questions that ask things like, what method of payment does your business use? What type of environmental practices does your business use or practice, and things of that nature? So it's a really a wide-ranging source of information about particular businesses at different communities in terms of the provincial level, as well as for the 20 cities. There's data for 20 cities across Canada. So I just wanted to make sure that we have time to touch on that. And then the last point, and that's sort of out of time, but the last point I just wanted to make sure we touch on is, I'm just going to go to the StatsCan homepage again, and I'm going to sort of bring us back to those tabs along the top of the page, and just point you to, if you wanted to know information from other government agencies, you can go to the canada.ca tab on our webpage, and it will take you to the sort of the all the different governments and departments within the federal government. And so I wanted to show you very quickly, because we don't have much time, I wanted to show you the information that's available from Innovation, Science and Economic Development Canada, and particularly the information that's available with respect to business performance or financial performance. So Innovation, Science, Economic and Development Canada. So this is one way. You can obviously just Google them as well, but just want to draw your attention to sort of this federal department. And as my page loads, please, is there a question?
Just so everyone knows, like, you should be bookmarking the Innovation, Science and Economic Development Canada page if you are in business in Canada. This is really where you're going for so much business information and that sort of thing. So I'm going to I'm just going to plop it into the chat as well.
Sure. And my page is taking a moment to load here, but I wanted to draw your attention to, and I think Laszlo might be able to post the links if this page doesn't load. They have links to financial performance information that allows you to do business reports for particular industries by NAICS code. And you can look to see, for typical businesses based on revenue size, 30,000 or more, 500,000 or more, what are the sort of expectations what are the costs that you can expect to incur? What are some of the things like employee costs, and what is the potential margins that industry might be encountering? I'm not exactly sure why this page isn't loading. Apologize here.
Maybe I can do a little help here, Darren. So I'm just going to help people. Please take a look, because I know that we're starting to run out of time, but a couple of good reasons to look at that site. And I put a second link in for everyone if you want to open that on your workstations, everyone. The second link is just the basic business and industry section. And this is where you can go to get all kinds of information, including research and business intelligence, information on business grants and financing. This is another reason to know your NAICS code and to know who you are and what your industry is and what business you're in, and how to identify yourself as the business owner. Are you youth, woman, Indigenous, immigrant, entrepreneur? Are you in a certain part of the country? Because if you go into the business grants and financing section there on the second link I put in chat, it'll ask you all those questions, and then it'll spit you out all the programs available to you and your business for access to tax credits, lending, funding that are available to you and in your startup stage based on how much money you want, so on and so forth. So that's key. These are the key websites for you. Also, I'm going to put in some links to the BDC while Darren wraps up financial ratios, because the BDC has a lot of information on what they are and how they work, so that you know why they're important to your business planning, because you want to compare yourself to others in the industry and make sure you're putting together in your business plans what are industry relevant things for your type of business. So I'll search for that.
Okay, and so I've just sort of highlighted what Linda was referring to, and this I'll just quickly, because we only have a minute or two left. I just want to show you the research and business intelligence link on the page. So if you can go to the business and research and business intelligence link, and it will take you to well, it will take you to a host of information in terms of labor market information and things of that nature, financial performance data. But you can also look at industry sector intelligence information. So you can look at particular industries and things of that nature. I'm just going to draw your attention to the financial performance data because we don't have that much time, and just sort of point you to sort of the type of information you can look. You can select information for particular NAICS code. So if I select create a report, it's going to ask me, okay, what is your revenue range? What is the level of geography that you want? So I'm going to say Alberta. And then it'll say, you know, incorporated or unincorporated business, let's say incorporated. And then it'll allow you to create a market report for a particular NAICS code. So if someone has a particular NAICS code, I'll just keep it simple, 311. And they'll say, okay, you're talking about animal food manufacturing, dog and food cat manufacturing. I'll just select this one. Let's say other. And it will create a report. And it'll give you an indication in terms of type of total revenue expectations by different business sizes, labor costs, and things of that nature. So this can be extremely useful in terms of that basic balance sheet information that would be useful for a business plan development. So with that, I know we're out of time. Any questions? I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Any questions? I hope that was helpful. Oh, please go ahead.
One question left. Is there a proper way to reference source material on the Statistics Canada website?
Oh, that's a great question. There is. Unfortunately, I left the page, but if you go to any data table, you go down to the bottom of the table, there'll be a little notation that says how to reference or how to cite. And so you can copy and paste that, and that would be sort of the ideal way, because then you're identifying the actual data table that you're using. That's a great question. Hope that was helpful. I know we're out of time, but again, feel free to reach out to us and Linda, and thanks again. Thank you for attending.
Thanks, Darren. Darren and Laszlo, thank you so much for doing this with us today. I'm going to stay on a little bit longer to answer questions. Yes, there are going to be more sessions from StatsCan. So a few things to notice. StatsCan's done some sessions in the past. If you want to go to the Business Link YouTube channel and look for the StatsCan sessions that have been done in the last 6 months, we have a couple of them, and then this one will get loaded up in the next day or so. And then into the new year, StatsCan's going to come on and do this one again along with a different one. You've got a different one coming as well. I think Desiree's told me in the new year. And I'm going to check in with Julian, our Business Link marketing guru. Julian, do you have the link to the Business Link YouTube channel? I don't have that.
I do, yeah.
Do you want to
Here,
stick that
I
in?
sent it earlier in the chat, but yeah, I will send it right now.
Okay, let's post that into the chat, and then we've got that. You bet. It's amazing what your government tax dollars at work can do for you. I have put links and also to the BDC Entrepreneur Toolkit. If you haven't gone to access those resources, that's more of your government dollars at work. The BDC is a Crown Corporation, the Bank for Entrepreneurs. So go there. Darren and Desiree and all the good folks, Laszlo at StatsCan, are these are the resources for you to help you identify. So what you're looking for in market research is to understand yourself and your industry and the business that you're in, to understand your competition, who are your competition and what does that look like, and to understand some ideas around who might be your ideal client, who are these people, what are they spending and where. So this is all what we would call secondary market research. This is the stuff of secondary market research. If you want to learn more about identifying your ideal client through market research, understanding why people buy, doing those pieces of market research, then I suggest you head on over to the Business Link website and sign up for our market research for business success, because we cover more of that aspect of it in that particular 90-minute workshop. Along with some of these ideas, we also cover a lot of, how you can find some key things and things you need to know about understanding your ideal clients. So, Buys the Bird is in a recognized digital advisor. Happy to chat. Thanks, Emily. And we are also a delivery for Business Link also delivers the Canada Digital Adoption Program and DEP, Digital Economy Program. So thank you, Emily, for letting us know that. And happy to have you all on today. Thank you everyone for joining us. Enjoy your lunches, everyone, and we can stop our recording and